Let us begin by unfurling a great imaginary map of Europe before our mind's eye. Visualize the texture of the paper. Heavy, slightly yellowed with age, smelling faintly of old dust and history. If you were to let your finger trace across the lands of Germany, you would feel a landscape dense with stone. The map is crowded with dots. Each one represents a fortress. There are more than 25,000 castles and ruins scattered across the German hills. They stand like silent sentinels, guarding the Rhine, watching over the Black Forest. Move your finger west into France. The density increases. If we count every grand chateau and fortified manor, the number swells to nearly 45,000. Even in the smaller kingdom of Belgium, the land is studded with nearly 3,000 strongholds. Europe, it seems, is a continent built on stone fortifications. But then, your finger drifts to the coast, to the Netherlands, and suddenly, the map goes quiet. Here, in this space of lowlands and waterways, the dots disappear. The ink seems to fade. In the entire country, only about 600 to 700 castles remain. This silence on the map is strange. It feels like an anomaly. Remember, this is not a poor nation. We are looking at one of the oldest and wealthiest civilizations in European history. This was a global superpower during the golden age of castles, a land of immense trade and influence. So, why the stark difference? Why is the landscape so empty? This is not just a curiosity of numbers. It is a genuine historical mystery. Historians estimate that the Netherlands once possessed around 1,300 castles. That means, over the centuries, roughly half of their castles have vanished from the face of the earth. And here is the truth that makes this story so fascinating. These castles did not simply crumble under the weight of time. This was not passive decay. This was not nature reclaiming the stone. The disappearance of Holland's castles was an active process. It was deliberate. It is the logical, sometimes brutal, and deeply pragmatic outcome of a unique national character. A character shaped by geography, by economics, and by a revolutionary spirit that viewed the world differently from its neighbors. The Dutch did not just let their castles fall. In many cases, they actively destroyed them. Now, you might pause and think, perhaps the Dutch simply do not care about their history. But that would be completely wrong. Think of what this nation has preserved. They meticulously protect their iconic windmills, keeping their sails turning for centuries. They maintain the 400-year-old canal houses of Amsterdam with obsessive care. They pour fortunes into preserving their monumental churches. The Dutch cherish their heritage. This makes the specific absence of castles even more baffling. It implies a conscious choice, a ruthless sorting of what was worth saving and what was not. To understand why they made that choice, why they chose to erase their own fortresses, we cannot look at the hills, for there are none. We must look down. The answer is found under the water. To understand the true nature of the Dutch castle and to understand why they vanished so quietly into the mist of history, we must first change the way we look at the earth beneath our feet. We must let go of our expectations. Close your eyes for a moment and let the image of the towering cliffs of the Rhine fade away. Let the steep green hills of the Ardennes dissolve into memory. Forget the dramatic crags where a fortress might perch like an eagle's nest, looking down upon the world. Here, in the Low Countries, the world flattens. It stretches out, endless and level, a vast horizontal canvas where the horizon line is drawn with a ruler. The sky here feels immense, occupying two-thirds of your vision, a great dome of shifting grays and soft blues that meets the earth in a seamless embrace. This is a landscape defined not by stone, but by water. Imagine standing in a field in Holland 500 years ago. The air is cool and carries the scent of damp earth and salt. The ground beneath your boots is not solid rock. It is not the unyielding granite of a mountain range. It is soft. It is peat. It is a thick, sponge-like layer of ancient organic matter, dark and rich, holding rainwater like a reservoir. If you were to take a step, you would feel a gentle give. The earth sighs under your weight. It is a land that is half solid, half liquid, a marshland that breathes with the tides and the seasons. Half of this country lies below the level of the sea, protected only by the fragile intervention of human hands. Now, imagine trying to build a fortress here. Picture a traditional medieval castle in your mind, a massive stone tower, the donjon. Its walls are 2, perhaps 3 meters thick. It is built of heavy, quarried blocks, each weighing as much as a horse. You stack these blocks high, reaching 30 meters into the air, creating a mountain of masonry designed to withstand the pounding of catapults. If you were to place such a structure on the soft, peaty soil of the Netherlands, the result would be immediate and disastrous. The earth would simply refuse to hold it. The stone tower would sink. It would tilt and slide into the mire, swallowed by the very ground it was meant to defend. And so, the Dutch builders, pragmatic and ingenious, had to listen to the land. They could not build up towards the clouds in the same way their neighbors did. They had to build wet. They created a unique type of stronghold, known in their tongue as the Wadbur, the moated castle. Visualize this structure. It does not loom over you. It sits nestled within the landscape. To build it, they first had to create a foundation where there was none. They would drive hundreds, sometimes thousands, of long wooden piles deep into the mud, down through the peat, until they found a layer of sand firm enough to bear the weight. Listen to the rhythmic sound of the pile driver in the distance. Thump, thump, thump. A slow, steady heartbeat echoing across the flat boulders. It is the sound of patience. It is the sound of creating solid ground in a world of water. On top of this forest of submerged wood, they laid their bricks. And notice, they used bricks, not stone. Stone had to be imported from far away, dragged on barges down the rivers, heavy and expensive. But clay? Clay was everywhere. They dug the clay from the riverbanks, shaped it into small rectangular blocks, and baked them in fire until they turned a warm, rusty red. These Dutch castles were built brick by solitary brick. The walls were thinner, lighter. While a German fortress might boast walls thick enough to drive a wagon along the top, a Dutch castle wall might be only 60 centimeters thick, just 2 feet of baked earth standing between the lord and the outside world. You might wonder, surely such a thin wall is dangerous. Surely it is too fragile. But in the quiet logic of this landscape, it was enough. The primary defense of these castles was never the wall itself. The wall was merely the final boundary. The true shield, the true fortress, was the water. Surrounding the brick house was the moat. But do not think of a narrow, stagnant ditch. Think of a wide, shimmering lake, a body of water so broad that an arrow fired from the bank would lose its momentum before it reached the castle windows. The water is calm. It acts as a mirror, doubling the image of the castle. The red bricks are reflected perfectly in the dark, glassy surface. It is beautiful, serene, and almost hypnotic to look at. But for an attacker, this water was a nightmare. You cannot march across it. You cannot easily bridge it under fire. And the walls, rising straight out of this water, offered no foothold. The Dutch learned early on that their greatest enemy, the water could be their greatest ally. This realization grew from protecting a single house with a moat into protecting the entire nation. They developed a concept that is both terrifying and magnificent: the waterline. Imagine the landscape as a machine, a vast hydraulic machine composed of dikes, sluice gates, canals, and pumping stations. When an enemy army approached, perhaps the Spanish or the French, the Dutch did not rush to man the battlements of the stone castles. Instead, they sent a quiet signal to the engineers. They would go to the great wooden sluice gates, listen to the sound of the iron gears turning, the heavy creak of wet wood against wet wood, the rush of water as the gates are lifted. They did not unleash a tidal wave. That would be too destructive. Instead, they allowed the water to creep in, slowly, deliberately. Watch the water level rise in the fields. It spills over the banks of the ditches. It soaks into the grass. It rises until the green meadows disappear under a sheet of grey-blue water. But here is the genius of it. They would flood the land to a very specific depth, knee-deep, just deep enough to hide the ditches, the canals, and the sharp drop-offs in the landscape, and just shallow enough to prevent enemy boats from sailing. An army trying to march through this artificial sea would find themselves wading through freezing mud. They would stumble into hidden trenches. Their horses would panic. Their heavy cannons, the ones that could smash those thin castle walls, would sink instantly into the mire. You cannot march an army through soup. Now, let us leave the misty, open fields and the endless grey horizons of the polders. Let the cool, damp air of the countryside fade from your mind. We are moving indoors. We are moving from the silence of the mud to the quiet, rhythmic humming of the city. Imagine you are walking through the streets of Amsterdam in the Golden Age. It is the 17th century. The air here is different. It does not smell of peat and marsh water. It smells of roasting coffee, of sweet tobacco, of nutmeg and cloves brought from the other side of the world. The streets are lined with tall, narrow brick houses. They lean slightly forward, looking down at their own reflections in the canals. Inside these houses, the true power of the Netherlands resides. It is not a power of iron and swords. It is a power of ink and paper. Let us enter one of these houses, climb the stone steps, push open the heavy oak door. Inside, the world is hushed. The noise of the street is muffled by thick velvet curtains. The light is dim, golden and warm, filtering through windows made of uneven, hand-blown glass. In the center of the room sits a man. He is not wearing armor. He is not wearing the chainmail of a knight. He is dressed in fine black cloth with a stiff white collar that frames his face. He is a regent, a merchant prince. He sits at a heavy desk made of polished dark wood. The desk is cluttered with the tools of his trade: a brass scale for weighing coins, a stick of red sealing wax, a feather quill, and before him, open and waiting, is a ledger, a large book of accounts. Listen to the sound of the room, the crackle of the fire in the hearth, the slow ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner, the scratch, scratch, scratch of the quill against the parchment. This is the sound of the New World. In the rest of Europe, in the high castles of Germany and France, power was still tied to the land and the blood. A castle was not just a building. It was an identity. It was where your grandfather was born, and his grandfather before him. It was a sacred trust, passed down through the bloodline. To lose the castle was to lose your soul. But here, in this quiet room in Amsterdam, the mindset is different. The merchant looks up from his book. He has made a fortune in shipping, or perhaps in the spice trade. He has gold, he has influence, but he lacks one thing: a title. He wants the prestige that comes with nobility. And so, he looks at a castle in the countryside not as a sacred home, but as an object, a commodity, something to be acquired. In the Netherlands, the old feudal families were fading. They were land rich but cash poor. And so, the castles, these ancient Ridderhofstad, began to appear on the market. Imagine the transaction. It is not a conquest. There is no siege. There is only a conversation in a quiet room like this one. The merchant offers a bag of guilders, heavy, gold coins, clinking softly together. The old noble signs a piece of paper. The deed is transferred. With the stroke of a pen, the merchant becomes the lord of the castle. He can now add the preposition van, meaning of, to his name. He has bought his nobility just as he buys a shipment of grain or timber. He travels to his new purchase. He looks at the thick walls, the moat, the drawbridge. He does not feel the ghosts of ancestors. He does not feel the weight of centuries of defense. He sees a summer home. He sees a place to escape the smell of the canals in the hot summer months. He sees a garden where he can plant tulips. He sees a status symbol to impress his business partners. He begins to change the castle. He widens the windows to let in more light, weakening the defensive walls because he does not expect to fight. He plants an orchard in the courtyard where soldiers once drilled. He turns the armory into a wine cellar. The castle is no longer a fortress. It is an asset. It is an investment. But here is the danger of the merchant's mindset. An asset is only valuable as long as it generates a return. An asset is only worth keeping if the benefits outweigh the costs. Let us go back to the man at the desk. The years pass. The economy shifts. The cost of labor rises. He opens his ledger again. He dips his quill in the ink. He looks at the column marked expenses. Maintenance of the roof, 500 guilders. Dredging of the moat, 300 guilders. Repair of the brickwork, 200 guilders. He frowns. The castle is expensive. It is damp. It is drafty. It is far from the city where the real money is made. He looks at the column marked income. The castle produces nothing. It sits there eating money. In the mind of a German count, the cost would not matter. You do not sell your heritage because the roof leaks. You starve if you must, but you keep the castle. But the Dutch merchant is pragmatic. He is unsentimental. He looks at the numbers, and the numbers tell a clear story. The asset is a liability. The emotional distance is the key. Because he bought it, he can sell it. Or if no one wants to buy it, he can simply stop paying for it. He closes the book. The heavy thud of the leather cover echoes in the quiet room. He blows out the candle. He has made a decision based not on honor or war or history, but on the cold, hard logic of the balance sheet. The castle is no longer necessary. And in a world governed by this quiet, calculating pragmatism, being unnecessary is the most dangerous thing of all. The seeds of destruction are not sown by enemy cannons, but by the stroke of a pen in a silent room. The ledger books are closed. The golden light of the merchant's study fades. We are moving now into a darker, heavier atmosphere. The air grows thick. The scent of spices and coffee is replaced by a sharper, stinging smell. It is the smell of sulfur. It is the smell of black powder. We have entered the era of the gun. To understand why the castles vanished, we must look at the physics of a single moment. Imagine a brick wall. That slender, 60-centimeter wall of a Dutch moated castle. It was built to stop an arrow. It was built to stop a man climbing a ladder. It stands there, reflected in the water, proud and vertical. Now, imagine an iron ball, heavy, cold, perfectly round. It flies through the air, propelled by an explosion. It does not move like an arrow, arching gracefully. It moves in a flat, brutal line. When this iron ball meets the brick wall, the result is not a battle, it is a demolition. The bricks do not stand a chance. They shatter. The mortar turns to dust. The wall does not just break, it evaporates. In the span of a few years, the invention of the cannon rendered 5 centuries of architecture obsolete. The tall, proud towers of the medieval age became death traps. If you stood in a high tower, you were just a target against the sky. The Dutch engineers, those masters of earth and water, saw this happen. They looked at their tall castles and they shook their heads. They knew, with their relentless practicality, that the age of the castle was over. They began to build something new. Close your eyes and visualize a star fort. It is low, it hugs the ground. It is not built of stone towers, but of packed earth, covered in grass. From above, it looks like a snowflake or a star with sharp, geometric points jutting out into the landscape. It is a triumph of mathematics. The angles are calculated so that there are no blind spots. The walls are thick, soft earth that absorbs the cannonballs like a cushion absorbs a punch. But what of the old castles? The brick mansions in the lakes? They were now worse than useless. They were dangerous liabilities. And this brings us to the most painful chapter of the story, the chapter of active destruction. It is the time of the 80 Years' War. The Netherlands is fighting for its independence against the mighty Spanish Empire. The Spanish armies are marching north. A Dutch commander stands before an old castle. It belongs to his people. It is beautiful, but he knows that he does not have the men to defend it. And he knows that if he leaves it standing, the Spanish will capture it. They will put their own soldiers inside. They will use this Dutch castle to dominate the Dutch countryside. He faces a terrible choice. To save the land, he must wound it. He gives the order. Listen to the sound. It is not the roar of enemy fire. It is the calculated placement of gunpowder barrels at the foundations of the tower. A fuse is lit. A spark travels along the rope. The explosion is deep and muffled. The tower shudders. And then, slowly, gracefully, it collapses into the moat. The water splashes high, then settles. This is the policy of scorched earth. The Dutch destroyed their own history to deny it to the enemy. But the true climax of this destruction came later. Let us move forward to the year 1672. In the Dutch memory, this number is carved in black stone. They call it the rampjaar, the disaster year. It was a year when the sun seemed to set on the Republic. The armies of France, England, and Germany invaded all at once. The country was surrounded. The cities were in panic. Once again, the Dutch turned to their ultimate weapon, the water. They opened the great sluices. The water line was activated. A massive curtain of water swept across the land, halting the French armies in the mud. But behind the water line, the decision was made. Everything that could help the enemy must go. Bridges were burned. Windmills were dismantled. And the castles? The castles were marked for death. Take the case of Castle Valkenburg. It was a majestic fortress, perched high on one of the few hills in the country. It had stood for centuries. When the Dutch army retreated, they did not just lock the doors. They blew it apart from the inside. They shattered the keep. They brought down the walls. They did it thoroughly. They did it efficiently. When the dust settled, there was nothing left but a jagged silhouette of ruins against the grey sky. Imagine standing there in the rain, days after the explosion. The smoke has cleared. The noise is gone. All you hear is the wind whistling through the broken stones. The rain washes the dust from the rubble. It is a scene of profound melancholy, but in the Dutch mind, it was necessary. A ruin cannot be garrisoned. A pile of stones cannot be used to oppress the people. The destruction was an act of survival. They sacrificed the symbols of their past to ensure they would have a future. The castles fell so that the nation could stand. And as the rain continues to fall on the broken stones, the water rises in the moat, hiding the scars, covering the debris in a blanket of silence. The smoke of the disaster year clears. The waters recede. Time flows forward, slow and steady, like the rivers that wind through the Dutch delta. We move now through the calendar. The 17th century becomes the 18th. The air changes again. The heavy, metallic scent of war dissipates, replaced by the electric, buzzing energy of new ideas. It is the year 1795. The wind blowing from the south, from France, is no longer carrying the sounds of invading armies. It carries a voice. It carries the words liberty, equality, fraternity. The Batavian Revolution has arrived. Imagine the mood in the town squares. It is not fearful, it is fervent. People are planting liberty trees, tall wooden poles decorated with ribbons and hats, symbols of a new age. The old order of feudalism, of lords and serfs, is being swept away. And in this new light, the castle looks different. For centuries, the castle was a symbol of protection. Then, it became a symbol of status. But now, to the eyes of a revolutionary, the castle is a symbol of tyranny. It is a stone monument to an unequal past. It represents everything the new world wants to leave behind. Let us travel to the city of Nijmegen. High on a hill, one of the few hills in this flat land, stands the Walkhof, the Falcon's Court. It is magnificent. It is vast. It is one of the oldest imperial sites in the north. Charlemagne himself, the king of the Franks, walked these halls 1,000 years ago. Emperors were crowned here. It is a masterpiece of history, a giant of stone watching over the river wall. You might think that a nation would protect such a treasure. You might think they would turn it into a museum. But the year is 1798. The provincial assembly meets. The room is filled with men in simple coats, men of the new republic. They look at the Walkhof. They do not see history. They see an obstacle. They vote. Listen to the sound of the gavel hitting the wooden table. Bang! The decision is made. The castle is to be demolished. But this demolition is different from the explosions of the war. This is not a violent destruction. It is a dismantling. It is a slow, methodical, almost industrial process. Close your eyes and listen to the sounds of the demolition site. There is no gunpowder here. Instead, there is the rhythmic clink, clink, clink of iron pickaxes striking stone. It is a steady beat like a metronome. Workers swarm over the ancient walls like ants. They are not destroying the materials. They are harvesting them. You see, the Walkhof was built of tough stone, a rare volcanic rock imported from Germany centuries ago. It is valuable. The Dutch mindset, ever practical, ever the merchant, sees a wasted asset standing on the hill. Why let a castle sit empty when the stone is worth money? They begin to peel the castle apart, layer by layer. They take the heavy blocks of tough stone. They load them onto carts. The wooden wheels creak under the weight. The horses snort, their breath visible in the cold morning air. They take the stone to the mills. Listen to the low, grinding rumble of the millstones. The ancient rocks, which once sheltered emperors, are crushed. They are ground down into a fine powder. This powder has a name. It is called trass. When you mix this powder with lime and water, it creates a mortar that is incredibly strong. It is waterproof. It is the perfect material for lining canals, for building basements in a wet country. The castle is literally being recycled. It is being transformed from a vertical monument of the past into the horizontal glue of the future. The Walkhof is sold off, pound by pound, sack by sack. Across the Netherlands, this scene repeats itself. Ruined castles are viewed not as tragedies, but as hardware stores. They are free stockpiles of brick, stone, lead, and iron. A farmer needs a new barn. He drives his cart to the local ruin. He dismantles a section of the wall. He loads the medieval bricks, Kloostermoppen, the monk's bricks, into his wagon. He takes them home. He cleans off the old mortar, scrape, 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 and then he builds his barn. There is something strangely beautiful in this pragmatism. The castle does not disappear. Not really. It is redistributed. The bricks that once protected a knight now protect a cow. The stone that once formed a dungeon now forms the foundation of a canal house in Amsterdam. The physical matter of the castle is absorbed into the body of the nation. This is the ultimate expression of the merchant's mind, applied with revolutionary zeal. Nothing is wasted. Sentimentality is a luxury they cannot afford. The past is heavy, but the materials of the past are useful. And so, the great towers were brought low, not by enemy fire, but by the patient hands of the people, taking back the stone to build a world of their own. The hill in Nijmegen becomes empty, a park where citizens can walk and look at the river while the castle lives on, unseen, in the mortar that holds the city together. Let us drift away from the practical, hard-edged world of the merchants and the engineers. Let us leave behind the smell of gunpowder and the sound of grinding millstones. The timeline of our story has moved forward, flowing gently like a river widening as it nears the sea. We have arrived in the late 19th century. The year is 1890. The world is changing. The industrial age has filled the cities with steam and steel, with noise and haste, but in the human heart, a countercurrent has begun to flow. It is a deep, longing sigh for the past. It is the age of romanticism. After centuries of cold logic, people have begun to dream again. They no longer look at a ruin and see a pile of cheap bricks. They look at a ruin and see a story. They see a tragedy. They see a canvas upon which they can paint their deepest fantasies of a time that perhaps never truly existed. A time of chivalry, of beauty, and of magic. To understand this dream, we must travel to the center of the Netherlands, to the province of Utrecht. But we are not going to a city. We are going to a forest. Imagine you are walking through this forest on a late autumn afternoon. The air is crisp and cool, carrying the scent of damp earth, fallen leaves, and pine needles. The light is filtering through the canopy of ancient trees, oaks and beeches that have stood here for hundreds of years. The sunlight is golden, slanted, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. Under your feet, the ground is soft. A thick carpet of moss and ivy covers the earth, muffling your footsteps. It is quiet here, so quiet that you can hear the wind whispering through the branches, the rustle of a squirrel, the distant call of a wood pigeon. As you walk deeper into the woods, the trees begin to part, and there, in a clearing surrounded by untamed nature, you see it. It is the skeleton of a castle, Castile de Har. For 2 centuries, it has slept. It has been abandoned to the elements. The roof is gone, allowing the rain and the snow to fall into the great halls. The walls are jagged and broken, like old teeth. Ivy has climbed up the stone, wrapping the towers in a green embrace, as if nature is trying to pull the castle back into the earth. It is a place of profound melancholy, a place of ghosts, If you were to stand inside the ruined courtyard, you would feel the weight of silence. The wind blows through the empty window frames, singing a low, mournful song. It is a ruin, yes, but in the eyes of the 19th century, it is perfect. It is a sleeping beauty, waiting to be kissed awake. And the one who would wake it was a man named Baron Etienne van Zuylen van Nieuweld. He was a man of immense heritage, a descendant of the old lords, and by his side was his wife, the Baroness Helen de Rothschild, a woman of the famous banking dynasty, possessing a fortune that was nearly limitless. They stood in this clearing, looking at the heap of stones. They did not see a demolition site. They saw a palace. They saw a summer home that would rival the royal courts of Europe. They did not want to patch the roof. They did not want to simply repair the walls. They wanted to resurrect the Middle Ages. They wanted to build a fantasy. To do this, they called upon a wizard of stone and glass, the most famous architect of the age, Pierre Kuipers. Imagine the scene in Kuipers' studio. It is a room filled with the smell of ink, parchment, and pipe tobacco. Large tables are covered with blueprints. Kuipers is a man who dreams in Gothic arches. He looks at the sketches of the ruin. He closes his eyes and imagines what could be, not what was, but what should be. He picks up his pen. Listen to the scratch of the nib against the paper. With every line he draws, he is not just designing a building, he is weaving a spell. He draws towers that soar higher than the originals ever did. He draws spires that touch the clouds. He draws statues, gargoyles, bridges, and gardens. He is designing a castle from a storybook. And then the forest begins to wake up. The silence of the ruin is replaced by the symphony of creation. This is not the hurried, desperate building of a fortress for war. This is the slow, deliberate craftsmanship of art. Imagine the sounds of the construction site. It is a soothing, rhythmic ASMR of labor. Clink, clink, clink. That is the sound of the stone masons. They have brought sandstone from far away. They are sitting on wooden benches, chisels in hand, carving intricate details. They are carving the faces of dragons. They are carving leaves and vines into the stone blocks. They are carving the coats of arms of their ancestors. Swish, swish! That is the sound of the saws cutting through heavy oak timber. The smell of fresh sawdust fills the air, a clean, woody fragrance. These beams will become the ceiling of the great hall. Hiss! Sizzle! That is the sound of the blacksmith's forge. Iron is being heated until it glows red, then hammered into beautiful shapes. Hinges for the great doors. Chandeliers that will hold 100 candles. Gates that will guard the entrance. Month by month, year by year, the castle rises from the earth. The broken walls are healed. The ivy is cleared away. The towers climb upwards, higher and higher, until they are tipped with slate roofs that look like the hats of wizards, sharp and dark against the sky. It takes 20 years. 20 years of patience. 20 years of money flowing like water. And finally, it is done. Let us walk towards it now. The forest has been tamed. The wild woods have been transformed into a park of geometric perfection. You are walking down a long gravel path. The gravel crunches satisfyingly under your shoes. To your left and right are gardens inspired by Versailles. Perfectly trimmed hedges, shaped into spirals and squares. Rose bushes, thousands of them, filling the air with a sweet, heavy floral perfume. And ahead, rising out of a massive, shimmering moat, is the castle. It is breathtaking. It is almost too perfect to be real. It looks like an illustration from a book of fairy tales. The red and white shutters on the windows are bright and cheerful. The gold weather vanes on the towers spin lazily in the breeze. Let us cross the drawbridge. The heavy wooden planks rumble beneath us. We pass under the portcullis, entering the courtyard. We push open the massive oak doors. They are heavy, solid, built to last 1,000 years. And we step inside. The first thing you notice is the smell. It is a rich, complex aroma. The scent of old wax polish on wood, the scent of dried flowers, the faint, smoky scent of a fireplace that has burned for decades, and underneath it all, the clean, cool scent of stone. You are in the main hall. It is a space so vast it feels like a cathedral. Look up. The ceiling is far, far above you. It is made of dark wood, carved with golden stars and intricate patterns. The light here is magical. It filters through stained glass windows. These are not clear windows. They are mosaics of ruby red, sapphire blue, and emerald green. When the sun hits them, they paint the stone floor with pools of colored light. The silence here is different from the silence of the ruin. This is a warm silence, a muffled silence. Your feet sink into thick Persian carpets. They are soft, deep, and luxurious. Tapestries hang from the balconies. They are woven with scenes of hunts and battles, threads of silk and wool telling stories of the past. These fabrics absorb the sound, making the room feel intimate despite its size. You walk through the corridors. You run your hand along the banister of the grand staircase. The wood is smooth, cool, and polished to a shine like glass. You enter the dining room. A long table is set for a banquet. Crystal glasses sparkle in the light. Silver cutlery gleams on the white tablecloth. You can almost hear the phantom sounds of a dinner party, the clinking of glasses, the polite laughter, the rustle of silk dresses. But here is the secret of Castile de Har. Here is the twist that makes it truly Dutch. As you walk through these medieval halls, you feel warm. In a real medieval castle, you would be freezing. The stone walls would radiate cold. The drafts would cut through your clothes. But here, the air is pleasantly toasty. Hidden behind the carved Gothic wainscoting, hidden beneath the tapestries, is a network of copper pipes, steam heating. The Baroness de Rothschild wanted the romance of the past, but she demanded the comfort of the future. And look at the chandeliers above you. They look like they hold candles. But if you look closer, you see the bulbs. Electricity. Castile de Har was one of the first private homes in the Netherlands to have electric light. Beneath the castle, in the deep foundations, there is not a dungeon. There is a massive tiled kitchen. It looks like a laboratory. Huge coal stoves, hot water tanks, an electrical generator humming softly in the dark. This castle is a machine designed to produce comfort. It is a stage set, a perfect illusion. Pierre Kuipers and the Baron created a version of the Middle Ages that had been scrubbed clean. They removed the dirt, the cold, the disease, and the danger. They kept only the beauty, the nobility, and the style. It is, in a way, the grandfather of Disneyland, but built with real stone, real gold, and real passion. As night falls over the province of Utrecht, the castle lights up. From the outside, standing in the park, you see the windows glowing with a warm orange light. The reflection of the castle dances in the dark water of the moat. It looks like a lantern hanging in the darkness of history. It is a testament to the power of the imagination. The Dutch, the most practical people on earth, the people who destroyed their own castles to save money or to stop armies, finally allowed themselves this one great indulgence. They allowed themselves to dream, and as the moon rises over the turrets of Dahar, the castle stands silent and proud. It is no longer a fortress of war. It is a fortress of memory, a sanctuary where the past is kept safe, warm, and beautiful, protected from the ravages of time by a moat of water and a wall of dreams. And so we leave it there, glowing in the night, a perfect stone fantasy sleeping in the heart of the Netherlands. We leave the velvet warmth of the 19th century dream. We step out of the golden light of Castile de Har and let the heavy oak doors close behind us. The sound of the latch clicking into place echoes, fading into silence. We are traveling back again, back through the currents of time. The air around us changes. The scent of roses and beeswax vanishes. The atmosphere grows thicker, heavier, and more humid. We arrive in the 16th century. The landscape is still the same. The endless green fields, the grey skies, the shimmer of water in the ditches. But the mood is different. There is a tension in the air, a static charge. If you breathe in deeply, you can smell it. It is a sharp, stinging scent that tickles the back of the throat. It smells of charcoal. It smells of sulfur. It is the scent of the new world arriving to shatter the old. It is the era of gunpowder. To understand why the Dutch castles vanished, we must first understand the profound silence of the brick wall. Let us stand before one of these medieval walls. It is a Wadburg, a moated castle. Stand at the edge of the moat and look at the wall rising from the water. It is a beautiful thing. It is built of thousands upon thousands of red bricks. Each brick was shaped by a human hand, pressed into a wooden mold, dried in the sun, and baked in a kiln until it was hard as stone. Notice the texture of the wall. It is rough, weathered by centuries of rain and wind. Lichen grows in the cracks, painting the red brick with patches of soft green and yellow. For 500 years, this wall was the ultimate definition of safety. It was a vertical line drawn against the world. It said, "Here you stop, here I am safe." If an enemy approached this wall with a sword, the wall laughed. If they approached with a bow and arrow, the wall stood firm. The arrow would strike the brick, clack, and fall harmlessly into the water. The wall was a shield. It relied on height. It relied on the simple fact that it is difficult to climb a vertical surface while people are throwing things down at you. But the laws of physics were about to change. Imagine, in the distance, a new object. It is not a sword. It is not an arrow. It is a cannonball. Let us hold this object in our minds. Feel the weight of it. It is a sphere of solid iron. It is heavy, impossibly heavy. It is cold to the touch. The surface is pitted and rough, cast in a sand mold in a hot, smoky foundry. This iron ball is a concentrated point of kinetic energy. It is the fury of a thunderstorm, compressed into a sphere the size of a melon. Now, let us watch, in extremely slow motion, what happens when this new era meets the old. The cannon fires. A cloud of white smoke blooms like a flower. The ball flies through the air. It does not arc gracefully like an arrow. It travels in a flat, brutal trajectory. It tears through the air, making a low, humming sound. Hum. It crosses the moat. It ignores the water. And then it makes contact. The moment of impact is not just a collision. It is a conversation between two different types of matter. The iron is dense, unyielding. The brick is rigid, brittle. In the old world, rigidity was strength, but against the cannonball, rigidity is a weakness. The energy of the iron ball transfers into the wall. The brick cannot bend. It cannot absorb the shock. And so, it must break. Crack. The sound is sharp and dry. The bricks at the point of impact do not just break. They pulverize. They turn instantly into red dust. The mortar bonds shatter. The shock wave travels outward, rippling through the wall like a stone dropped in a pond. Cracks zigzag up the tower, lightning bolts of empty space appearing in the masonry. The ball does not stop. It buries itself deep into the heart of the wall, or perhaps it punches straight through, emerging on the other side, bringing a shower of debris with it. Gravity takes over. The bricks above the hole have nothing to hold them. They slide downward. The vertical line collapses. A breach is formed. This did not happen in a day. It happened over decades of realization. The Dutch military engineers, men of math and measurement, looked at their beloved castles. They looked at the tall, proud towers reflecting in the moats, and they realized, with a heavy heart, that the tower was dead. Height was no longer an advantage. Height just made you a bigger target. A tall tower was simply a pile of bricks waiting to be knocked over. The castle, the Wartburg, the home of the knight, was obsolete. So, what did the Dutch do? They did what they always do. They looked at the problem, they looked at the landscape, and they reinvented the solution. They stopped building up. They started building down. They stopped building with hard stone. They started building with soft earth. Let us visualize the replacement. Let us fly up into the grey sky and look down at the town of Naarden. From above, it does not look like a building. It looks like a snowflake or a star, a perfect six-pointed star stamped into the green landscape. This is the star fort. It is a masterpiece of geometry. It is low, hugging the horizon. You can barely see it until you are right on top of it. The walls are not vertical. They are sloped, angled gently back. And they are not made of brittle brick. They are made of packed earth, covered in thick, lush grass. Why grass? Why earth? Because earth is soft. Imagine the iron cannonball flying towards this new wall. It hits the grassy slope. Thump. There is no crack. There is no shattering. The ball hits the soft earth, and the earth accepts it. It absorbs the energy. The dirt compresses. The ball buries itself in the mud, like a marble dropped into dough. The wall does not break. It merely swallows the attack. The star fort is a kind of architectural judo. It uses the enemy's strength against them. It uses softness to defeat hardness. It is quiet here at the star fort. The wind blows over the grassy ramparts. Sheep graze on the slopes, keeping the grass short. It looks more like a park than a fortress, but it is the deadliest structure on earth. The geometric points of the star mean there are no blind spots. Every inch of the surrounding water is covered by crossfire. It is a machine of defense, powered by mathematics and mud. But this new invention created a terrible problem for the old castles. The Netherlands was entering its darkest hour. The 80 Years' War had begun. The mighty Spanish Empire, the superpower of the age, was marching north to crush the rebellious Dutch provinces. The Spanish army was a terrifying machine. Tercios, regiments of pikemen and musketeers, moved like a forest of steel across the land. They brought with them the heavy siege cannons, the wall breakers, and scattered across the Dutch countryside were hundreds of the old brick castles. The Dutch commanders looked at their maps. They looked at the little dots representing the castles: Muiderslot, Amersoyen, Brederode. They realized these castles were no longer assets. They were liabilities. If the Dutch tried to defend them, the Spanish cannons would smash the walls in an hour. But if they left them empty, the Spanish would march in. They would use the castles as barracks. They would use them as prisons. They would use them as strongholds to control the local villages, to store their grain, to rest their horses. A castle captured by the enemy becomes a dagger pointed at your own heart. And so, the order was given. A quiet, grim order that rippled through the ranks of the resistance. Scorched earth. If we cannot hold the castle, no one will. Let us witness this moment. Let us slow down time and stand in the courtyard of a castle that is about to die. It is a cold morning in November. A mist hangs over the moat, obscuring the far bank. The water is still, black and glassy. The castle is empty. The furniture has been removed. The tapestries have been taken down. The rooms echo with the footsteps of the last few soldiers. These are not Spanish soldiers. These are Dutch soldiers. They are moving with a heavy, somber purpose. They are not repairing the wall. They are undermining it. Watch them as they work. There is no panic. There is a methodical, almost industrial rhythm to their movements. They are rolling barrels across the cobblestones. Heavy wooden barrels, banded with iron. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The sound echoes off the high brick walls. They roll the barrels into the base of the great donjon, the main tower. They place them carefully in the cellar, right against the thickest part of the foundation. The air in the cellar is cool and smells of damp mold and old wine. Now, it begins to smell of something else. They pry open the lids of the barrels. Inside is a black, granular powder, gunpowder. They trail a line of powder across the floor. It looks like a black snake winding through the dark. The soldiers leave. They cross the drawbridge one last time. They walk out to a safe distance, turning back to look at the home they are about to destroy. A single soldier remains to light the fuse. Watch the flame. It is a small flickering point of yellow light in the grey mist. It touches the black powder. Hiss! The spark comes alive. It travels. It is a living thing, eating the fuel, racing towards the dark heart of the tower. We wait. The silence of the countryside stretches out. A crow calls in the distance. The wind rustles the reeds in the moat. The tension builds, tightening like a wire. And then it is not a sharp sound. It is a deep, concussive thud that you feel in your chest before you hear it with your ears. The ground shakes. The water in the moat jumps, ripples expanding violently outward. The base of the tower blooms outward. The red bricks, which have stood for 300 years, simply detach from one another. The tower does not tip over like a felled tree. It slumps, it drops straight down, as if the earth has opened a mouth to swallow it. A cloud of dust rises. It is red, thick, and choking. It billows up, mixing with the mist, hiding the destruction from view. For a long time, there is only the sound of falling debris. Clatter, thud, splash, stones falling into the water, bricks tumbling onto bricks. And then silence returns. The dust settles slowly, coating the grass in a fine red powder. Where the proud tower stood, there is now only a jagged, broken stump. A gap in the smile of the skyline. The Dutch soldier turns away. He does not cheer. There is no victory here. There is only a grim satisfaction. The castle is dead. The Spanish cannot use it. This scene played out again and again. It played out at the castle of Brederode. It played out at the Huistekleef. It was a form of self-mutilation. To save the body of the nation, they had to cut off the limbs. But the destruction did not stop with the 80 Years' War. History has a way of repeating its lessons, each time with more force. We move forward in time again. The calendar turns. We arrive in the year 1672, the Rampia, the disaster year. If the 80 Years' War was a slow burn, the disaster year was a forest fire. The Netherlands was at the height of its golden age. It was the richest country in the world. Its ships sailed every ocean. Its warehouses were bursting with spices, silk, and porcelain. But wealth creates envy, and envy brings wolves. From the south came the armies of King Louis XIV of France, the Sun King. From the sea came the English fleet. From the east came the German bishops. The Republic was attacked from all sides. The French army was the finest in Europe. They moved with terrifying speed. They captured city after city. Utrecht fell. The French soldiers were feasting in the Dutch halls. Panic seized the nation. The people turned on their leaders. It was a time of chaos and fear. But in the center of the storm, a cold, hard logic re-emerged, the logic of the water. The order was given to open the sluices. The water line was activated. The farmers watched as their harvest was swallowed by the rising tide. The cows were led to higher ground. The polders became inland seas, and along with the water came the demolition squads. This time, the destruction was even more ruthless. Consider the tragedy of Castle Amarongan. It was a beautiful house, filled with art and treasures. When the French arrived, the owners had fled. The French troops, frustrated by the water, angry at the mud, decided to send a message. They did not just blow it up for strategy, they burned it for spite. Imagine the fire. Not the quick flash of gunpowder, but the slow, crackling hunger of the flames. The orange light reflects in the night sky. The heat warps the glass in the windows until it melts and drips like honey. The roof timbers groan and snap. The tapestry catches fire. The history woven into the thread turning to ash in seconds. The smoke rises, a black pillar visible for miles. When the sun rose the next morning, Amerongan was a hollow shell, a blackened skeleton standing in the water. But the most significant act of destruction in this era happened at Valkenburg, in the far south. Valkenburg was unique. It sat on a high hill. It was a true fortress, a strategic key to the region. It had been captured and recaptured, besieged and battered for centuries. In 1672, the Dutch forces recaptured it from the French. The commander, acting under the orders of William III, looked at the battered walls. He knew that the French would come back. He knew he could not hold it forever. He decided that Valkenburg had to die, but he wanted to make sure it stayed dead. He did not just want to damage it. He wanted to erase it as a military possibility. The demolition took days. They placed charges under every tower, every gate, every section of the wall. When they detonated the explosives, the sound was heard for leagues around. The castle was blown inside out. It was not just disabled, it was disemboweled. Today, if you go to Valkenburg, you can still see the ruins on the hill. They are jagged, tooth-like shards of marlstone jutting out of the earth. They look like natural rock formations. So thorough was the destruction. They have never been rebuilt. They remain as a monument to that decision. This period of history teaches us something profound about the Dutch character, something that helps us sleep at night with a sense of clarity. It teaches us about the power of letting go. Most cultures cling to their symbols. They fight to the death to save a stone building because of what it represents. The Dutch realized that the building is not the nation. The stones are not the people. Sometimes to survive, you must dismantle the structures you spent centuries building. You must be willing to flood your own land. You must be willing to blow up your own towers. It is a painful process. It is violent. But it is also cleansing. There is a strange peace in the aftermath of the explosion. Imagine standing by the moat of a destroyed castle in the years after the disaster year. The war is over. The French have gone. The water has receded. The ruin sits there. The sharp edges of the broken bricks are beginning to soften. Weeds are growing in the rubble, small purple flowers pushing up through the debris. Birds are nesting in the holes where the floor beams used to be. The moat is calm again. A duck paddles silently across the surface, leaving a V-shaped wake that points towards the fallen tower. The castle has lost its function. It is no longer a machine of war. It has become part of the landscape. It is resting. The tension of the vertical line, the tower trying to defy gravity, is gone. The debris has returned to the horizontal. It lies flat on the earth, embraced by the mud and the grass. It is a return to the natural order, dust to dust, clay to clay. The violence of the gunpowder was a brief, hot flash, but the silence that follows is long and cool. It is the silence of acceptance. The Dutch looked at these ruins, and they did not weep. They turned their backs on the rubble and looked towards the dikes, towards the windmills, towards the merchant ships sailing out to the horizon. They understood that the past is heavy, and sometimes you have to set it down or blow it up in order to keep walking. As we drift further into this story, leaving the smoking ruins of the 17th century behind, we will see what happens next. We will see how the anger fades. We will see how the need for destruction turns into a need for something else. We will see how the ruins, once feared as liabilities, become something valuable again, not for war, but for the very mortar that holds the future together. But for now, let us stay in this quiet moment after the explosion. The dust has settled, the air is clear, the water is still. The castle sleeps in pieces, relieved of its duty, sinking slowly, peacefully, back into the soft, welcoming arms of the earth. The smoke of the disaster year has long since cleared. The waters of the flood have receded, leaving the earth rich and green once more. The cannons have grown cold and silent. We are drifting forward in time, floating down the river of history. The 17th century, with its golden light and dark wars, slips away behind us. We are entering the 18th century. And then we cross the threshold into the year 1795. The air feels different here. It is no longer thick with the humidity of the polders or the sulfur of the battlefield. It feels brisk, it feels sharp, it carries the scent of fresh ink, of printed pamphlets, and of something else, the scent of change. A new wind is blowing from the south, from France. It does not bring an invading army this time. It brings an idea. Liberté, égalité, fraternité. The Batavian Revolution has arrived in the Netherlands. Imagine the atmosphere in the town squares. The orange flags of the princes are gone. In their place are the tricolor cockades. Men and women are no longer subjects. They are citizens. There is a sense of tidying up, a sense of sweeping away the old clutter of the past to make room for a rational, enlightened future. And in this new light, the ancient castles, those that survived the gunpowder and the floods, look very different. To the revolutionary mind, a castle is not a romantic ruin. It is not a beautiful object. It is a symbol. It stands for the old order. It stands for feudalism. It stands for the power of the few over the many. It is a heavy stone reminder of a time when the lord in the high tower owned the labor of the farmer in the field. And the Dutch, being the most practical people on earth, decided that symbols of tyranny should not just be removed. They should be liquidated. They should be put to work. Let us travel to the city of Nijmegen. It is an ancient city, perched on the banks of the river Wal, and crowning the city, sitting on a high ridge, looking down at the water, is the Walkhof, the Falcon's Court. Let us pause to admire it before it vanishes. It is a colossus. It is one of the most significant imperial palaces in northern Europe. Its history stretches back deep into the mist of time. Charlemagne, the king of the Franks, the father of Europe, walked these halls 1,000 years ago. Emperors were crowned here. Friedrich Barbarossa held court here. It is a complex of towers, chapels, and great halls. It is built of tough stone, a volcanic rock that glows with a warm, yellowish-gray hue in the sunset. It looks permanent. It looks like a mountain carved by human hands. You would think that such a building would be protected. You would think it would be a sacred monument. But the year is 1798. The Provincial Assembly of Gelderland meets in a quiet room. The air is filled with the smoke of clay pipes. The men at the table are not historians. They are administrators. They are merchants. They are accountants. They look at the Volkov. They see a derelict building. It is old. It is drafty. The roof needs repairs. It costs money to maintain. And crucially, it represents the hated nobility. A proposal is placed on the wooden table, a simple piece of paper. It suggests that the castle is unnecessary. It suggests that the materials, the stone, the lead, the iron, are valuable assets that are currently being wasted. The vote is called. Listen to the sound of the hands raising, the rustle of sleeves, the scratch of the quill recording the count. The decision is made. The Volkov will not be blown up. That is the way of war, and the war is over. No, the Volkov will be sold. It will be dismantled. It will be recycled. The demolition of the Volkov is one of the most fascinating and hypnotic events in this story. It was not a chaotic destruction. It was a harvest. Close your eyes and imagine the scene. It is a bright, clear morning. The demolition crew arrives. They do not bring explosives. They bring pickaxes. They bring crowbars. They bring hammers. The process is slow. It is methodical. It has a rhythm. Clink, 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 thud. A worker stands on a scaffold. He wedges the tip of his iron crowbar between two massive blocks of tough stone. He pushes. He leans his weight into it. The mortar, old and dry, gives way with a dusty crack. The heavy stone block slides free. It tips over. It falls onto a pile of sand below with a dull, heavy whump. This happens again and again, block by block, layer by layer. The tower is unmade in the reverse order of how it was built. It is a deconstruction. It is an unbuilding. But what happens to the stone? This is the key to the Dutch genius. They do not throw it away. You see, the Volkov was built of tough stone. This is a volcanic rock that was imported from the Eiffel Mountains in Germany centuries ago. It is rare, and it has a special chemical property. If you crush tough stone into a fine powder and mix it with lime and water, it creates a substance called trass. Trass is a miracle material. It creates a mortar that is waterproof. It creates a cement that can harden even when it is underwater. In a country like the Netherlands, where the war against water never ends, waterproof mortar is more valuable than gold. It is used to line the canals. It is used to build the basements of the great merchant houses in Amsterdam. It is used to seal the sluice gates. And so, the majestic palace of Charlemagne is not destroyed. It is transformed. It is ground down to build the infrastructure of the new republic. Listen to the sound of the grinding mills. The heavy stone blocks are loaded onto carts. The horses pull them to the mill. The stones are fed into the crusher. Rumble, grind, crunch. The history of the emperors is pulverized. The walls that heard the whispers of kings are turned into grey dust. This dust is bagged. It is sold to builders. It is mixed into wet, grey paste. And then it is spread by a trowel between new bricks in a new city for a new purpose. The vertical majesty of the castle becomes the horizontal strength of the canal. The castle literally disappears into the fabric of the nation. This phenomenon was not unique to Nijmegen. Across the Netherlands, in the years following the revolution, a strange fever took hold. We call it the hardware store mentality. Imagine you are a farmer in the year 1800. You need to build a new barn for your cows. You need bricks. You need timber. You could go to the market and pay a high price for new materials. Or you could look at the ruined castle on the edge of your village. It is sitting there, abandoned. The load is gone. The roof is half collapsed. To the pragmatic Dutch mind, this is not a ruin. It is a stockpile. It is a free quarry. And so, the villagers come. They come with their wheelbarrows. They come with their wagons. Watch them as they work. It is a quiet, communal activity. A man creates a human chain with his sons. They stand by a crumbling wall. One man pries a brick loose. He scrapes off the old mortar with a trowel. Scrape, scrape. He passes the brick to his son. The son passes it to the neighbor. The neighbor stacks it in the wagon. Clack, clack, clack. The sound of brick stacking is satisfying. It is the sound of order being created from chaos. They take the lead from the windows. Lead is soft, heavy, and useful. It can be melted down to make pipes or musket balls. They take the iron hinges from the doors. Iron is strong. It can be forged into horseshoes or plowshares. They take the oak beams from the ceiling. The wood is old, seasoned, and hard as iron. It will hold up the roof of a farmhouse for another 300 years. Piece by piece, the castle evaporates. It is carried away, ant-like, by the people who live in its shadow. There is a certain beauty in this. It is the ultimate form of recycling. Nothing is wasted. The energy that was put into making the bricks 500 years ago is preserved. The bricks simply move house. If you walk through a Dutch village today, look closely at the old farmhouses. Look at the retaining walls near the church. You might see a patch of bricks that look different. They are larger than modern bricks. They are rougher. Their color is a deeper blood red or a purple brown. These are the Kloostermoppen, the monks' bricks of the Middle Ages. They are the ghosts of a castle hiding in plain sight. The castle of the local lord is now the wall of the pigsty. The tower of the knight is now the chimney of the baker. This is the merchant's mindset applied to history. It is unsentimental. It is efficient. It is egalitarian. Why should a pile of stones sit uselessly on a hill, serving only the vanity of a memory, when it could be keeping a family warm? This philosophy is what makes the Dutch landscape so unique. In Germany, the ruins were left to rot, becoming romantic, ivy-covered skeletons that inspired poets and painters. In the Netherlands, the ruins were eaten. They were consumed by the hunger for progress. The landscape was tidied up. The useless was made useful. As the sun sets on the 18th century, we see a landscape that is flattening out. The high towers are gone, either blown up by the soldiers of 1672 or carried away in the wheelbarrows of 1800. The skyline is low. The horizon is unbroken. But the materials are still there. The atoms of the castle are still present. They have just changed form. The castle has become the city. The fortress has become the home. And in this transformation, there is a deep, resonant peace. The tension of history, the wars, the sieges, the power struggles, has been ground down into mortar and smoothed over. The violence of the past is sealed inside the walls of the present, invisible and silent. Let us rest here for a moment. Let the image of the grinding mill fade. Let the sound of the pickaxe soften into silence. We are left with the quiet satisfaction of a job well done, the satisfaction of a tidy ledger, the satisfaction of a clean slate. The stones are sleeping in their new homes. The dust has settled, and the Netherlands moves forward, practical and calm, into the modern age. We return once again to our mental map of the Netherlands. We look down at the flat green patchwork of polders and waterways. We have seen the empty spaces where the great towers used to stand. We have seen the scars left by the gunpowder and the pickaxe. But as our eyes scan the landscape, we notice something important. The map is not entirely empty. Scattered across the country, like solitary islands in a sea of green, there are dots that remain. About 600 of them. These are the survivors. They are the castles that did not crumble. They are the towers that were not blown up by fearful generals. They are the walls that were not cannibalized by farmers to build barns. They stand there, reflected in their moats, their bricks glowing red in the afternoon sun. They look peaceful. They look permanent. But why? Why did these specific stones escape the great obsolescence? Why were they spared when so many others were erased? The answer is not found in romance. It is not found in luck. As always with the Dutch, the answer is found in purpose. The survivors did not survive because they were beautiful. They survived because they were useful. They were allowed to stay because they had a job to do. Let us drift now, like a leaf on the water, towards the mouth of the river Vecht, just east of Amsterdam. Here, guarding the entrance to the Zuiderzee, stands the Muiderslot. It is the quintessential picture of a medieval castle. It has round corner towers. It has a high slate roof. It has a drawbridge suspended on heavy iron chains. But if you close your eyes and listen to the history of this place, you do not hear the clash of swords. You do not hear the roar of battle. You hear the sound of business. Clink, clink, clink. It is the sound of coins. The Muiderslot survived because it was a toll booth. It was a machine designed to generate revenue. Imagine the scene in the year 1650. The river is busy. Heavy, wooden merchant ships are sailing towards Amsterdam, their bellies full of grain, timber, and peat. To pass the river mouth, they must pass the castle. The castle is not a threat, it is a checkpoint. The heavy iron chain is lowered into the water. The ship slows down. The sails are furled. The captain rows ashore. He walks across the drawbridge. He enters the toll room. They speak in low voices. They discuss the cargo. They weigh the coins. We have wandered slowly through the jagged, silent ruins of the medieval towers, where the stones still hold the cold memory of centuries past. We have traced with our fingertips the rough, weathered scars of walls that once crumbled under the thunder of a history. We have rested, sinking deep into the velvet warmth of the country estates, where the air is still and heavy with the scent of old wood and polished floors. But now, the time has come to leave those heavy structures behind. Let us gently step outside. Let us turn our backs on the buildings, on the walls, on the confines of stone and mortar. Let us walk away entirely. We are drifting out now, moving slowly into the vast, open fields of the Netherlands. Feel the space opening up around you. The trees are left far behind, fading into the distance. The villages, once busy and loud, are now nothing more than tiny, insignificant dots resting on the far edge of the horizon. We are entering a pure world, a quiet realm stripped down to its two most eternal elements, the solid earth beneath our feet and the infinite sky above. To truly understand the final, closing chapter of the Dutch castle, we must let go of what we think a castle should be. We must understand that the castle did not simply vanish into the mist of time. It merely changed. It shifted its state of matter. It underwent a slow, magical alchemy, transforming from solid, unyielding stone into soft, liquid water. The Dutch people realized, after the smoke of the gunpowder had cleared and the wars had faded into silence, that building a rigid box of bricks was a foolish way to defend a nation. A box, no matter how strong, can be broken. A box can be surrounded. A box is finite. And so, in their wisdom, they decided to turn the entire country into a fortress. But this would be a fortress unlike any other, a fortress you could not see with your eyes, an invisible fortress blending perfectly into the silence of the land. We call this the New Hollandse Waterlinie, the New Dutch Water Line. Imagine yourself now, standing perfectly still in the middle of a vast, endless green meadow. The grass here is thick, lush, and cool. It ripples softly in the gentle breeze, moving in waves like the heavy fur of a great sleeping animal, breathing slowly in its slumber. Above you hangs the magnificent Dutch sky. It is a sky famous in the quiet world of art. The great painters of the Golden Age, masters like Ruysdael and Vermeer, spent their entire lives trying to capture the unique pearlescent light of this canopy. It is immense. It is overwhelming. It occupies two-thirds of your vision, stretching up and out to infinity. Great clouds, like slow-moving mountains of soft white cotton, drift lazily across the deep blue expanse. They cast large moving shadows that slide silently over the grass below, darkening the green for a moment before the light returns. Drift, drift, drift. The movement is hypnotic. It pulls you in. There is no rush here, only the slow passage of time. Everything around you looks peaceful. You see a simple ditch filled with still, dark water. You see a row of pollarded willow trees, their branches trimmed back, standing like silent sentinels. You see a flat, straight road disappearing into the distance. But do not be deceived by the quiet. You are standing inside a vast, sleeping machine. This entire landscape, stretching for 85 kilometers from the waters of the Zuiderzee down to the banks of the river Waal, is a weapon that is resting. Hidden deep beneath the soft grass, hidden within the earthen dikes, are thousands of sluice gates. Quiet, heavy iron gates, waiting in the darkness for a hand to slowly turn the wheel. If the alarm were ever raised, the water would not rush in with violence. It would not crash like a tsunami. It would rise gently. It would seep up from the ground like a memory returning. It would spill softly, silently, over the edges of the ditches, covering the roots of the grass. In the span of 48 hours, this green ocean of meadow would transform into a shallow, silver sea, a sea measured with absolute precision, exactly 40 centimeters deep, just deep enough to hide the ground, but shallow enough to reveal it. It is too deep for a wagon to roll through. It is too deep to drag the heavy weight of a cannon. But cruelly, it is too shallow for a boat to sail. It is a trap made of liquid. It is a shield made of water. It is a wall that cannot be broken, because water has no shape to break. It heals itself instantly. If you fire a heavy cannonball into the water, the surface simply ripples, swallows the iron, and closes over the path, returning to perfect stillness. This is the genius of the invisible fortress. It uses the emptiness, the very void of the landscape, as its strongest defense. Let us walk together along the top of a dike in this quiet, expansive landscape. The path is raised high, lifting us toward the clouds. To your left and to your right, the land stretches out to infinity, flat and calm. Occasionally, you will see a strange rounded shape rising from the tall grass. It is not a castle. It is a bunker. These are the children of the 20th century. They are made of heavy grey concrete, low, rounded shapes, half buried in the embracing earth. They are covered in thick velvet moss now. Long grass grows wild on the roofs. They look like ancient burial mounds, or great sleeping tortoises, hiding their heads in the landscape, waiting for a winter that never ends. Let us approach one of them. Place your hand on the wall. The concrete is cold and rough to the touch. It holds a permanent dampness, a chill from the earth. These bunkers were built to house men and machine guns, to watch over the waterline. But they were never truly used in anger. The water itself was the real guard, the silent protector. Now the bunkers are abandoned. Nature is slowly, gently reclaiming them. Vines creep like slow fingers over the narrow gun slits. Spiders weave intricate diamond-studded webs in the empty doorways, catching the morning dew in the mist. Inside, it is dark and profoundly silent. It is a silence deeper than the medieval crypts, heavier
than the stone tombs. It is the dense, muffled silence of thick concrete. These bunkers are the modern ruins. They are the humble successors to the proud break towers. But unlike the towers, they do not try to reach up and touch the sky. They try to sink down and become the earth. They are humble. They hide. They sleep. As we walk further down the path, we begin to hear a sound, a rhythmic distant heartbeat, echoing softly across the fields. Thump, thump, thump. It is slow. It is steady. It is the pulse of the Netherlands. It is the deep, resonant sound of a pumping station. In a land built entirely on water, the water must be moved. It must be guided. It must be controlled. Let us travel in our minds to the Kroekers pump near Haarlem. It is a cathedral dedicated to steam. Imagine a massive building constructed of dark brick with tall, elegant Gothic windows. But inside, there is no altar for prayer. There is only a cylinder, the largest steam cylinder ever built by human hands. At the center of the vast room is a giant iron arm, pivoting slowly like a colossal seesaw. Hiss! The steam enters, hot and white. Groan! The great iron arm lifts, heavy, slow, and laborious. Splash! The water is lifted and poured away. This is the slow, mechanical breathing of the country. Inhale, exhale. For centuries, these machines have worked day and night, never sleeping so that the people can. They lift the rain that falls on the low polders and pour it gently into the canals, sending it out to the distant sea. If the machine stops, the land disappears. There is something incredibly soothing about this rhythm. It is reliable. It is consistent. It is a lullaby of engineering, rocking the land to sleep. The engineers who tend these machines are the new knights of this realm. They do not wear shining armor. They wear oil-stained overalls. They do not carry heavy swords. They carry simple oil cans. They walk quietly around the great iron beast, listening to the hum, checking the pressure gauges, speaking in whispers. They are the guardians of the dry land. And so, we realize that the landscape itself becomes the monument. In other countries, you admire the soaring mountains. You admire the deep canyons. You admire what nature created by chance. But here, in the Netherlands, you admire the very ground you are standing on. Because it was created by people. Every inch of dry earth exists only because someone, somewhere, decided it should be there. Every field is a quiet victory. Every canal is a story of survival. The castle is no longer a building where Lord lives in isolation. The castle is the polder where the cows graze in the mist. The castle is the tulip field blooming with color in the spring. The castle is the safe, dry home of millions of people sleeping soundly in their beds. The walls of this castle are the dikes, broad green embankments that hold back the weight of the sea. Let us stand on top of a dike now, one last time. To one side is the land, houses with warm lights, roads, schools. To the other side is the water, grey, choppy, restless, always waiting. The dike stands between them. It does not look impressive. It is just a simple mound of dirt and clay packed tight. But it is stronger than any stone wall ever built by a king. It is a monument to cooperation. A single person cannot build a dike. A dike requires a village. It requires a nation. It requires everyone to agree that survival is the most important thing. And so, the Dutch replaced the vertical ego of the feudal lord with the horizontal cooperation of the community. They traded the tower for the barrier. As the sun begins to set over the polders, the light turns a deep, rich golden hue. The water in the canals glows like molten metal, reflecting the dying light. The clouds turn soft shades of pink and purple, bruising the sky. The windmills, those ancient sentinels, stand perfectly still in the evening calm. Their sails are locked for the night, silhouettes against the darkening blue. The steam pumps continue the slow, rhythmic work. Thump, thump. The bunkers sleep under the heavy blankets of thick moss. The invisible fortress is secure. There are no enemies at the gates. There is only the wind, the water, and the quiet, enduring earth. We can rest here. We can lie down in the tall, soft grass of the waterline. We can look up at the infinite, darkening sky. We are held in the palm of a giant hand made of earth and engineering. We are safe. The water watches over us. The dikes hold us. And the history of the castles lies buried deep beneath the roots of the grass, a memory of a harder time, now softened, smoothed, and silenced by the profound peace of the landscape.
The wind blows over the dikes. The steam pumps hum in the distance. The modern world is rushing forward outside. Trains are steaming across the polders. Factories are rising in the cities. The pulse of the 20th century is beginning to beat faster and faster.
But we are not going forward. We are stepping aside.
We are walking towards a heavy oak door of one of the surviving castles. It might be Kasteel Heeswijk or perhaps Duivenvoorde. It stands quiet, surrounded by its moat, shielded from the noise of the new world by a ring of ancient trees.
We turn the iron handle. We push the door open. Crack, and we step inside. The first thing that hits you is the silence. It is a different kind of silence from the bunkers or the prisons. This is a dense silence, a silence that feels like it has weight. It is the silence of a library, the silence of a church. The second thing is the smell. It is the perfume of the past. It smells of floor wax, that sharp, clean scent of turpentine and beeswax. It smells of old paper, vanilla, and almond. It smells of dried lavender kept in bowls. And underneath it all, the faint, metallic tang of brass and iron. We have entered the era of the Romantic Museum. In the 19th century, as the world outside became industrial and chaotic, the owners of these castles, the barons and the counts, retreated inward. They did not want the future. They wanted to capture the past. They stopped seeing their homes as fortresses. They started seeing them as cabinets of curiosity. Let us walk slowly into the great hall. The light here is dim. The curtains made of heavy velvet, the color of crushed grapes, are drawn halfway across the tall windows. A single shaft of golden sunlight pierces the gloom, illuminating millions of dust motes dancing in the air. Dance, drift, suspend. The room is full. It is cluttered. This is not the sparse, cold interior of the Middle Ages. This is the Victorian dream of history. Every surface is covered with objects. Look at the walls. They are not bare stone. They are paneled in dark, carved oak, and hanging on the oak are weapons. But these weapons are not for war. They are for decoration. There are swords arranged in fans, like petals of a steel flower. There are muskets with inlaid pearl handles, crossed over shields. There are suits of armor standing in the corners, polished to a mirror shine, holding halberds in their metal gauntlets. They look like silent sentinels, guarding a war that ended centuries ago. Let us move closer to the suit of armor. Look at the details, the rivets, the hinges, the etched patterns on the breastplate. In the quiet of this room, you can almost imagine the man inside. But there is no man. It is a hollow shell, a ghost made of steel. The owner of this castle, let us call him the Baron, was a collector. He spent his life traveling to auctions, buying up pieces of history to fill his home. He wanted to build a barrier against time. Walk over to the large table in the center of the room. It is a massive slab of walnut wood, dark and glossy. On the table sits a collection of curiosities. There is a globe, yellowed with age, showing a map of the world that no longer exists. A world where the oceans are full of sea monsters, and the continents are shaped by guesses. There is a glass case containing a stuffed bird, a falcon perhaps, or an owl. Its glass eyes catch the light. It is frozen in mid-flight, a permanent statue of nature. There are coins, Roman coins, Spanish doubloons, Dutch guilders, small, cold circles of metal that once bought bread, or ships, or lives. Now they rest on velvet pads, sleeping. There is a clock on the mantelpiece. Listen to it. Tick, tock, tick, tock. It is a slow, heavy rhythm. It is the heartbeat of the house. The pendulum swings back and forth, slicing time into seconds. In this room, time does not feel like a straight line. It feels like a pool. The past and the present swirl together. The Baron sits in his leather armchair, reading a book printed in 1600, surrounded by armor from 1500, while the steam train of 1900 whistles in the distance. He has created a bubble, a sanctuary. Let us leave the great hall and enter the library. The acoustic changes here. The room is lined from floor to ceiling with books. The leather spines absorb every sound. The air is dry and warm. There are thousands of books here. Books bound in calfskin. Books with gold lettering. Run your finger along the spines. The texture of the old leather is rough and cracked, like the skin of an old hand. These books contain the knowledge of the world, theology, botany, astronomy, maps of the stars, but they are resting now. They are rarely open. They stand in rows, shoulder to shoulder, like a regiment of soldiers made of paper and ink. In the corner of the library stands a spiral staircase made of wrought iron. It twists upwards like a vine, leading to a gallery above. It is beautiful. It is intricate. It is a piece of art that serves no purpose other than to be beautiful. This is the essence of the gilded twilight. The castle has become a theatre set. The Baron is the actor, playing the role of the noble lord, even though the world outside has moved on to democracy and commerce. He dresses the stage with care. He places a lute on a chair, as if a minstrel has just left the room. He places an open letter on a desk, written with a quill, sealed with red wax. He is telling himself a story that the world is still magical, that the world is still ordered, that honor and chivalry still exist in the dark corners of the house. Now, let us step out of the library and into the winter garden. This was a popular addition in the 19th century, a glass conservatory attached to the castle. The light here is bright and milky. The air is warm and humid. It smells of damp earth and ferns. The Dutch, with their love of botany, filled these rooms with exotic plants brought back from the colonies in the East Indies. Great palm trees reach for the glass roof. Ferns unfurl their green fronds. Orchids hang from baskets, their petals waxy and strange. It is a jungle inside a castle. Here, the Baron would sit and drink his tea. He is surrounded by glass. On one side, he sees the ancient brick wall of his ancestors. On the other side, he sees the green, tropical leaves of a distant continent. It is a surreal contrast, the medieval and the exotic, the stone and the jungle. It is a dreamscape. The castle is no longer a place of defense. It is a place of imagination. It is a vessel for dreams. But there is a melancholy here too. As we walk through these cluttered, beautiful rooms, we feel a sense of endings. The families that owned these castles were fading. Their wealth was drying up. The cost of maintaining these massive roofs, these heated greenhouses, these armies of servants was becoming too high. The hardware store mentality of the farmers had passed, but a new threat had arrived. Taxes, inheritance, the modern economy. The baron is the last of his kind. He knows deep down that his children will not live like this. He knows that this world of velvet and silence is fragile. And so, he collects with even more passion. He stuffs the house even fuller. He tries to anchor himself to the earth with heavy furniture and heavy gold frames. He is trying to build a dam against the flow of time. But time is like water. It always finds a way through. Let us go upstairs to the bedrooms. The beds are 4-poster beds, draped in heavy brocade curtains. To sleep here is to sleep inside a tent of fabric. On the bedside table sits a candle in a silver holder. Imagine lying in this bed at night. The castle is silent. You hear the wind whistling around the towers. You hear the settling of the building, the creak of a floorboard, the tap of a branch against the window. You feel very small. You are sleeping inside a museum. You are sleeping inside history. The ghosts of the past are not scary here. They are comforting. They are the guardians of the house. The portraits on the walls look down at you. Men in white collars, women in pearl necklaces. They watch you sleep. They have watched 10 generations sleep. They are patient. They know that you are just a guest. You will pass, but the house will remain. As the 19th century turns into the 20th, these castles begin to change their nature again. The families become smaller. The servants leave to work in the factories. The fires in the great fireplaces are let go out. The castle begins to sleep. It waits. It waits for the next chapter. It waits to be discovered not by a baron, but by the public. It begins its transition from a private home to a public memory. The velvet ropes are prepared. The ticket booth is built. The guidebooks are written. But before that happens, there is this moment, this twilight moment. The moment when the house is still a home, but it feels like a dream. The moment when the clock on the mantelpiece seems to be the loudest thing in the world. Tick, tock. Let us sit in the leather armchair in the library. Let us close our eyes. We can smell the old books. We can feel the warmth of the velvet. We can hear the distant muffled sound of the world outside. A world that seems very far away. We are safe here in the cabinet of memory. Nothing changes here. The dust motes dance in the same pattern they danced in yesterday and the day before that. The sword hangs on the wall, sharp and bright, but it will never be drawn again. The armor stands in the corner, hollow and peaceful. The struggle for survival is over. The struggle for meaning has begun. And in the silence of the library, surrounded by the thoughts of 1,000 years, we find a deep, restful peace. The peace of a story that has already been told. The book is closed. The leather cover is cool under our hand. The candle burns low, casting long shadows that stretch across the floor, embracing the room in a soft, dark hug. We have traveled a long way together. We began our journey in the midst of the Middle Ages, standing on the soft, sinking peat. We watched the brick towers rise. We watched them crumble under the fire of cannons. We watched them being dismantled by the hands of farmers, and we watched them sleeping in the golden dust of the 19th century. Now, we step out of the heavy oak doors of the past. We leave the candlelit libraries and the velvet rooms behind. We step into the bright, clear light of the present day. The air is fresh. It smells of the sea. It smells of rain on asphalt. It smells of the future. We are looking for the final answer to our mystery. We asked, why did the Dutch destroy their castles? And now, standing here in the 21st century, we finally understand. They did not destroy them to leave the land undefended. They destroyed them because they were building something bigger, something better. They were building a castle that would not just protect a lord or a merchant or a king. They were building a castle that would protect everyone. They were building a castle the size of a country. Let us take flight. Let us lift off from the ground and float high above the Netherlands. From here, looking down, the map becomes clear. You do not see stone towers dotting the landscape. Instead, you see lines, straight, geometric, perfect lines drawn across the water. These are the true monuments of the Netherlands. Let us fly north. We are drifting towards the Zuiderzee, the great inland sea that once threatened to swallow the country. Below us, stretching from the province of North Holland to Friesland, is a line, a thin grey thread cutting the ocean in two. This is the Afsluitdijk, the enclosure dam. It is 32 kilometers long. It is a masterpiece of horizontal architecture. Imagine you are driving along this dam. The road is straight. The horizon is infinite. To your left is the Wadden Sea, wild, salty, rising and falling with the tides. To your right is the IJsselmeer, calm, fresh, and still. The dam is a wall, but it is not a wall of exclusion. It is a wall of creation. By building this line, the Dutch tamed a sea. They created a lake, and from that lake, they created land. Listen to the sound of the tires on the asphalt. Hum, hum, hum. It is a hypnotic, steady rhythm. The white lines on the road flash by. Zip, zip, zip. This dam is a fortress against the greatest enemy of all, the North Sea. But it does not look like a fortress. It looks like a road. It is humble. It is functional. It is built of clay, sand, and basalt blocks. Millions of tons of material, placed with mathematical precision, stand on the observation tower in the middle of the dam. The wind here is constant. It presses against your body. It is a strong, clean wind. You look out at the water crashing against the basalt stones. The stones are black, wet, and glistening. They do not move. They hold the line. Crash, swash. The water hits the stone and falls back. The land behind it is safe. This is the Dutch philosophy carved into the earth. God created the world, but the Dutch created the Netherlands. Now, let us fly south. We drift down the coast, past the dunes, past the cities of The Hague and Rotterdam. We arrive at the delta, where the great rivers flow into the sea. Here we find the eighth wonder of the world, the delta works. If the medieval castle was a knight in armor, the delta works are a giant in concrete. Let us hover over the Oosterschelde, the eastern Scheldt storm surge barrier. It is colossal. It consists of 65 massive concrete pillars. Each pillar is the size of a cathedral. They stand in the open water, a line of grey giants holding hands across the estuary. Between the pillars hang massive steel gates. Normally the gates are up. The water flows freely. The tides come in and out. The fish swim. The nature is undisturbed. But when the storm comes, when the North Sea rises in its fury, the order is given. Visualize the mechanism. It is calm. It is precise. Enormous hydraulic pistons begin to move. Oil flows through steel pipes. The gears turn. Whir, and the steel gates, weighing tons, slide slowly downwards. Click. They touch the bottom. The sea is locked out. The violence of the storm crashes against the other side. The waves pound the concrete. But behind the gates, the water is calm. The villagers sleep. The children dream. This is the ultimate evolution of the moated castle. The moat is now the sea itself, and the drawbridge has become a steel wall that can close off the ocean. It is a monument to engineering, but more importantly, it is a monument to maintenance. A stone castle is static. It sits there. The delta works are dynamic. They are alive. They are constantly checked, oiled, painted, and monitored. There are control rooms where men and women watch screens, tracking the weather, tracking the water levels. This is the lesson the Dutch learned. Survival is not a one-time act of building a wall. Survival is a process. It is a daily act of care. We float further south to the port of Rotterdam. Here lies the Maeslandkering. This is perhaps the most sci-fi object on Earth. It looks like something from a future civilization. It consists of two white, curved arms. Each arm is as long as the Eiffel Tower. They rest on the banks of the river, looking like giant sleeping ribs. When the danger comes, these arms swing out into the river. They meet in the middle. They fill with water and sink, creating a solid steel wall. It is the largest moving object on the planet, and yet it moves in silence. It swings on a ball joint made of steel and Teflon, polished to perfection. It is beautiful. It is terrifyingly large. And it exists for one reason, so that the people of Rotterdam can sleep without fear. This brings us back to the heart of our story. The Dutch destroyed their old castles because they realized that individual safety is an illusion. A lord in a tower is not safe if the peasants around him are drowning. A merchant in a mansion is not safe if the city walls are breached. In a country below sea level, we are all in the same boat, or rather, we are all behind the same dike. They replaced the vertical hierarchy of the feudal tower with the horizontal equality of the polder. The new castle is not a building you can own. It is the landscape you live in. It is the dry ground beneath your feet. If you walk through a modern Dutch city today, let's say Nijmegen, where the Walkhof Castle once stood, you feel this deep sense of security. The city is bustling. Bicycles hum along the paths. Trams glide silently on their rails. The lights of the cafes are warm and inviting. Walk to the park on the hill. The ruins are gone, or they are just low walls in the grass, places for children to play. But look at the ground. Look at the path you are walking on. It is paved with bricks, red, sturdy, baked clay. Perhaps, just perhaps, the atoms in those bricks once belonged to a tower. Perhaps they were part of a dungeon. Perhaps they were part of a great hall. But now, they are a path. They are helping you move forward. The energy of the past has been recycled into the stability of the present. The Dutch did not lose the history. They absorbed it. They ground it up and used it to build a foundation that is stronger than stone. And so, as we reach the end of our journey, we can find a deep comfort in this realization. We are safe, just as the Dutch sleeper lies in their bed, knowing that the great pumps are humming, knowing that the steel gates are standing guard, knowing that the dikes are holding the line. We too can let go. We can learn from the landscape. We can stop trying to build high walls around our egos. We can stop trying to defend the past. We can learn to be like the water, flexible, moving, adapting. We can learn to be like the earth, accepting, grounding, soft. We can learn that true strength does not look like a tower. It looks like a bridge. It looks like a road. It looks like a hand reaching out to hold back the storm. The night has fallen over the Netherlands. The sky is a deep, velvety indigo. The stars are reflecting in the thousands of canals, doubling their light. The windmills are still. The birds are sleeping in the reeds. The invisible fortress is active. It wraps around the country like a warm blanket. It holds the water back. It keeps the chaos away. Everything is in its place. Everything is working. Everything is maintained. You are inside the castle now. The castle of the modern world. The castle of peace. Drift along with the current. Float on the surface of the calm water. There is nothing left to defend. The war is over. The work is done. The stones are resting. The water is resting. And now it is time for you to rest too.